Holy Bible. You would not pick Debbie out of her family. Her little sisters had lots of troubles and a lot of drug abuse, and but she's in the psych ward at St. Anthony, and we go up to see her. She's going to start reading her Bible, but it's real hard to understand. And Debbie says, "Well, what kind of Bible do you have?" And Tina says, "Well, mine's a Holy Bible." So, so I always say, take out your Holy Bibles, find Joshua, and let's. And here we go. Nope, I want to go back. Okay, here we go. Joshua is not the Pentateuch. It's the first 5 books of the Bible. It's called the Pentateuch. Pentateuch means 5, like pentagram. Pentateuch, five writings is what that means. And so the first ones talk about Genesis. Talks about Adam and Eve, the flood, Tower of Babel. That's basically the early part of Genesis. But then you get to Genesis chapter 12. And we call Genesis chapter 12 the beginning of salvation history. And you say, well, salvation is always, but that's why we say Father Abraham. God called Abraham, and so that was the beginning of faith salvation. And in Genesis chapter 15, it says that, I think verse 3, says, and Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned unto him as righteousness. And so we call that the beginning of salvation history. So before the flood is a portion of time, and there was salvation then. You remember Enoch went up to be with God, right? But we talk about salvation history. The German word for it is Heilgeschichte. I just want you to know I know one German word. I know 3 or 4 German words. But anybody know German? I did a funeral with a bunch of German people one time, and I was laying my German words on them, and they had no idea what I was talking about. So don't take it like I know what I mean. But that's the beginning of salvation. That's why all through the Bible, we talk about Father Abraham, even in the New Testament, because that's the beginning of salvation. That's when God called Abraham, all right? And of course, Abraham and Sarah had a child named Isaac, and Isaac was a child of promise. Remember, they were old and all that, and Isaac means what? Everybody know? It means laughter. It means laughter because they're in their 90s and they have a kid, and you're going to have a son, they all start laughing. Well, who's laughing now? Isaac has 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. But we're going to focus on Jacob. Jacob is going to change his name to Israel. That gets confusing to people. But where the word Israel comes from is the change of name from Jacob. And remember, Jacob had the 12 sons, and the 12 tribes come from Jacob. Now, there's a variation there because Joseph is one of the sons. And you know the story about Joseph. Well, Joseph is the last big part of the book of Genesis is about Joseph. And he's real important. Anybody remember the story? There's a famine. The brothers sold him into slavery. He went to Egypt. All the business going on there. And finally, he rises up to be second in control. His brothers come. And then towards the end of Genesis, it says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Remember, that's a great verse, right? And So that's how Genesis ends. Genesis means beginnings, by the way. And so it ends with the story of Joseph. So you got the Pentateuch, the 5 books. We just reviewed the book of Genesis. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are all the same story told in a different way. So when you study Exodus, you're not getting all of Exodus unless you study Leviticus. You think Leviticus is all about the law. It's called the holiness code, but it's more than that. There's some narratives in Leviticus too. I mean, as well. Don't say Leviticus too. Leviticus as well. And then Numbers is actually a carry on. It just starts with numbering the people, but it carries on the story of Exodus. And then Deuteronomy, Deutero means two, Ronomy means law, and so Deuteronomy means a second telling of the law. And so just like the Gospels, tell the same story, but from different points of view, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy does that to a point. Okay? And so when you get to that's Moses. Come on. Click, 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 click. So Moses leads the people out in Egypt, and they wander for 40 years. And then in the book of Deuteronomy, you have the best description of how Moses, or God, chooses Joshua. Now remember, they sent the 12 spies, remember? And Caleb and Joshua were 2 of the 12 who said, we can do this, but the other 10 said, they're like giants and we're but like grasshoppers. Well, so Joshua is one of the people in the Bible, I believe this is right. Why am I having second thoughts? There's some people in the Bible where there's no wrongs listed about them. And Joshua may be one of them. He may not be. Because remember Ed's sermon last week about AI, where they didn't send enough troops to go up to AI. And anyway, Joshua is a real hero in the Bible. I mean, a real hero. So let's look at our Bibles, and here we go. Ready? Joshua 1, and I'm reading out a New King James because that's what was on the table. After the death of Moses, the servant of God, and see, remember, now look, the Pentateuch, first 5 books, very important in Jewish life. 4 of them are about Moses. All right? So Moses is a big deal, right? Big deal. And after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, and see how Lord's capitalized there? Y'all all know this, don't you? That's the word Yahweh. When it's got all those capital letters and small capitals, that's Yahweh. It's not Lord like master or sir. It's Yahweh. So the servant of Yahweh, it came to pass that Yahweh spoke to Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, now there's one of the jokes in the Bible. Who had no parents? Joshua. He was the son of Nun. It's an old Bible joke. And I thought, oh, we're on TV too. It's not copyrighted. Moses, my servant, is dead. And I'm going to tell you something. In Jewish life, that's a big thing. Now, therefore, arise, go over the Jordan. Remember, they couldn't cross over because of their unfaithfulness. You and all the people to the land which I'm giving to them, the children of Israel. Now, see how Israel, that's Jacob, right? So sometimes we think of Israel as a country, which is true, but Israel's a people. Israel's always a people. The sons of Israel. All right, I want to talk to you about something. Ready? It's called you know, get a whoa, whoa, whoa. All through the Bible, you can see a pattern. It's over and over and over. There's change that comes about. Something changes. But when that change happens, there's always challenges. And then to meet those challenges, there has to be some kind of connection. This is over and over and over and over and over in the Bible. And so the change was Moses has died. And that changed everything. He was the focus of 4 of the 5 books of the Pentateuch. Moses was a big deal. And so when he dies, that means something's changing. So now we have a challenge. And the challenge now is for Joshua to lead the people. So he has to connect. Well, let's talk about this. We'll just talk in a big group. What challenges do you think Joshua faced? What were some of the challenges that he faced? Okay, he's not the assistant. I've had several staff members go to be a pastor, and they're in shock when they realize now the buck stops with them. Yeah. One guy, can I tell you this story? One guy, love this guy. We were great friends, but he went to pastor. He was our music guy, actually. And he went to pastor, and I called him and said, "How you doing?" He said, "Oh, not good. Church's not doing well." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Fellowship." I said, "Fellowship? What's fellowship?" He says, "The people won't follow me." And I said, "Jim, that's leadership. Fellowship's not a word." So he found out. So that's one. That's a good one. What else? What's another challenge that he faced?
People that have spent a lifetime knowing one way of life lead into a new way of life.
Yeah, what are those ways? That's a good, you're right.
Go from wandering to army.
Okay, exactly. Very rarely talked about is that some nomadic herdsmen had to become an army. And so, all right, that's a good one. What else? Well, to take that another step, he had to go from being an assistant to a general. It's a different world, right? All right, what else? What other challenges did he have? Yeah, when you read through Joshua, it's going to talk about the tribes doing this and doing that, and some of the tribes are going to come cross over and fight, but then they're going to go back what we call a Trans-Jordan, which is the East Bank, and they're going to be. They were always a confederacy, though. They weren't ever a united people. They were always tribes. You can see that. I'll show you. No, I won't. I'll tell you now. Saul brought everybody together, King Saul. But then David really brought everybody together. And Solomon carried that out. But when Solomon died, his son Rehoboam, remember, said, the old counselor said to Rehoboam, you need to let up on the people a little bit. And the young guy said, no, be stronger. And so Rehoboam said, I'm going to increase your taxes. That's never a winning policy. And they split. And 10 of the tribes became went north, the northern tribes, and Judah and Benjamin stayed in the south and became Judea. And then it gets real confusing. The northern part was called Israel, and the bottom part was called Judea. And so, and then the Assyrians came and carried the northern tribes away, and they're the lost tribes. But they were always tribes, always. That's good. That's a good one. He had a challenge to keep the people together always. Yeah, that's a good one. What else? What other challenge would he have?
Right, as far as God's message, the battle of Jericho and the trust, that battle's not going to look God, so
Yeah.
spiritual, not just.
Yeah, it's called a theocracy, and it's an amazing thing how now the people, when their hearts were right, they wanted it that way. But he had to be a spiritual leader, a military leader, a civil leader.
That was Moses as well.
Yeah, exactly.
They had the Levites, but how often the people found their spiritual strength through Moses or Joshua or whatever, rather than the group that was designated as spiritual leaders.
I'm so glad you're saying that, because we're going to talk about spiritual leadership at the end of the. That's a good insight. Any other challenges you got in your brain? Well,
There's a people who does not want to be displaced.
yeah, they got adversaries, don't they? They got the hill people and the Jebusites and all those people. All the ites. Hittites. No, the Hittites aren't there. What so those are change challenges. How we kind of answered it, but how did Joshua need to connect? Let's just move on. He needed to connect with his people. He's a new leader. New leaders always have to reconnect. You can't just dovetail onto old leadership. So I think Joshua was proven and respected and all those things, but he did have to connect with them. He had to stay connected with the Lord, right? As well. And so there's always connections. All right. In Joshua 1, 3 through 5, anybody got anything? I raised 3 girls. I'm used to being interrupted. So if you want anything you want to interrupt. Huh? I love Jack. Do what? Every place that this is the Lord speaking to him, right? Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, as I said to Moses, from the wilderness in this Lebanon as far as the great river, that's the river Euphrates, all the land of, there's the Hittites and the great sea. The great sea is the Mediterranean. Going towards the going down of the sun shall be your territory. So God promised them. Solomon got close to this, but this got fulfilled north, south, and west, but there was never all the way to the Euphrates. And so now Solomon had people paying him dues or tribute. Thank you, tribute. But anyway, a lot of Bible scholars think there's still prophetic in that, and I might be on that page. Verse 5, this is a big verse. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I'll be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Now, the reason I wanted to teach chapter 1 was because of the next thing we're going to talk about, be strong and courageous. And in the next few verses, okay, we got that. In the next few verses, we're going to see how when when the Bible repeats something 3 times, right close, that's a learning or a teaching moment. And it means this is really important. Okay? So when Isaiah is in the temple and the angels say, "Holy, holy, holy," well, you know what that means? It means pay attention. God's holy. And so when you see something even twice in the Bible, Jesus would say, "Verily, verily," or "Truly, truly, I say unto you." That means pay attention. So the repetitiveness of it was a way of emphasizing it. And so these next few verses, we're going to talk about being strong and courageous. And so here we go. Ready? Be strong and of good courage. Well, this says good. What? I got the wrong Bible. Be strong and courageous, for this people shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Now, see, they're going to assign different parts of the land, and you'll look at some of that in weeks to come. Only, verse 7, be strong and very courageous, that you might observe to do according to the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. The book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. There's your spiritual emphasis. But you shall meditate on it day and night, that you may observe doing it to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and you will have good success. Now here's my verse. Have I not commanded you, be strong and of good courage, or be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid, do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. That verse 9, Joshua verse 9 of chapter 1, is a verse I use all the time. I'm going to tell you how I use it mostly, or my favorite way I've used it. When we had college kids, or when we had high school kids go off to college, I would try and write them twice a year, just send them a note. Right before, maybe a little before Thanksgiving, but I always wanted them to, finish strong and do well in their studies. And then I would write them at the spring. And what I would try and tell them is, I had 2 goals. One, I wanted them to finish well their classes. A lot of college kids and all sorts of other lives. In fact, it's in this passage. They don't finish well. They fall apart at the end. And so I always wanted them to finish well. But 2, I also wanted them to maintain their Christian devotion and faith, right? So you know what happens to kids when they go to college? So I always wrote them a couple of times a year trying to get them to hang in there in their walk with the Lord. And I'd always say at the end, instead of sincerely, I'd always say, be strong and courageous, Joshua 1:9. And so I've got a special affection for this verse. I put that on all sorts of stuff. Be strong and courageous. So and it's in there 3 times. So it means something, okay? So what was Joshua's immediate need of being strong, of having strength and courage? What was his immediate need, do you think? What would you say it would be? Okay, he's got to cross over. Now, you mean that symbolically, spiritually, or physically?
But I mean, when you think about like strength and courage, crossover.
it's going to split for them. But still, it's a boundary.
But I mean, even like taking that step out, because people that are with him cross the Red Sea.
Again, look at this generational. Who's he leading? And if you read, all the times that it's talking about this, talking about taking the land over and following the law. Well, these people have never seen oppression. They've never had their own land. They've never had anybody there that led them counterculturally. So now they're about to go to war, which is going to physically, emotionally, every other way challenge them. They're going to be, for the first time, seeing people living in ways other than how God calls them to live. And they're going to have to learn to stand against that because they don't fully get rid of them. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things here that he's saying, like, you guys are about to face stuff that you've never faced.
Now I'm sorry, I just remembered they did fight some of the Edomites that wouldn't let them pass through the land, so that was kind of a fight.
But, I mean, your question is, what is Joshua's immediate? First of all, it's encouragement, because he's stepping into a role that he hasn't done before. He's watched. It's way different, like you said, to watch someone do something. Like, we can sit back and judge and be like, we should have done that differently. It's up to us to do it. We're like, that was a little harder than I thought it was going to be. So I think initially, just that encouragement. I don't know. I just think initially step into a role, have to do all those things that have had a leader that they love, and now there's a new guy.
I don't want to brag on myself, but I'm going to tell you a story. Last 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I did a funeral of one of my favorite old deacons. Great guy, great family, and his granddaughter we're close to, and I'd recommended her to a church to be the girls minister, and she's awesome. If we want to do a girls ministry thing, this girl's awesome, and she wanted to speak at her grandpa's funeral, and she was nervous, and I said, Whitley, you'll do a great job. Well, she wrote me a little note after the funeral and says, thank you, because I needed the encouragement. Well, what'd I say? What'd I do? I said, Whitley, you do a great job. But she needed that. We all need encouragement. And I say, you love the people the most that have encouraged you the most. You think about growing up and the people that you look back and love. Who were they? They're the ones you don't look back fondly at that coach or that teacher that chewed you out all the time. Do you? I don't. And I've got some. But I learned some new cuss words that my Marine daddy didn't know from some anyway. But encouragement, that's part of it. He also, what I think of when I think of Joshua, he needed to go ahead and do it, not put it off, not wait. Now's the time. For 40 years, everybody's been saying not yet, right? But now is yet. Now's the time. And I think sometimes we need strength and courage when we know this is it. We need to do it now. What else? You got another idea? Anybody? I love this next question. I don't think it's easy, but let's do it, okay? You ready? Well, I love this one too. That's not what I thought it was. Why is strength and courage together? That's a hard question. Oh, by the way, I've got a page over here if you want to make a copy. I got, looks like 13 times with in Deuteronomy, Joshua, and such, and on through all the way to, I think, yeah, Chronicles, where in the Bible, someone tells someone, or the Lord tells someone, be strong and courageous. Yeah, or even if it's a big, it's a big challenge, maybe. Yeah.
Ed's sermon from a week or two ago or whatever about the difference between Saul and David facing
Oh,
Goliath.
I'm unreliable. I wasn't here, but go ahead.
Well, but
Everybody
so
else was.
It was that, Saul had the strength. I mean, he was big, burly, handsome, this, that, whatever else. He had all the physical qualities. David had the courage. He had the dependence on God. He had all of those things. And so, in this case, he's telling him, basically, I don't know how to word it. But he's saying, yes, this is going to take some work. I mean, that everything he calls us to takes work, but it also takes that dependence. I think that's where the courage comes in, is through that dependence.
David was, he wasn't a weakling, but he was strong and courageous. I love it when he says, Philistines, Samson says, you come to me with sticks and stones, I'm going to feed you to the birds. And David says, the same God that delivered me from the lion and the bear will deliver you into my hands this day. And wallop.
I always thought, think about, got an army behind Goliath that's in shock that Goliath just went down. And then David takes it a step further and cuts his head off. And it's like, I mean, that's mental warfare right there.
There's an old rabbi tradition. Do y'all know this story? There's an old rabbi tradition. You remember David went and got 5 stones?
That he had 5 brothers.
That he had, well, 4 brothers.
4 brothers.
And David was, where I grew up, when you fought somebody, you had to fight all their brothers too. That just rings so true to me. All right. Well, let's see what the next question. I think they're paired together because of faith. You can be brave and you can have a lot of strength, but that's not what the Bible's talking about. The Bible's talking about be strong in the Lord and be courageous with your faith. And to me, that's what that's talking about. To express your faith in God with your actions. And I'm going to contend with you. You've heard this in a sermon. I don't expect you to remember it, but I have a hard time separating biblical faith and real courage. Because you look at the times that people showed great faith, they were always being strong in their faith and courageous in their actions. And I think that's why they're paired together. What say you about that? Anybody? It may be why there's a weakness in the Christian testimony in our day is because we're not practicing be strong and courageous in our faith and going after the life issues that are there. Right.
He could have, they were beautiful. He could have ignored the fact that they were idols and said, hey, great artwork, and kept going, right?
You know, that's a great illustration because it's exactly Paul stood up in front of all those academicians and said, I'll tell you about the real God.
Because it could have easily been disguised. I mean, their statues and their idols could have someone not knowing walk in somewhere and you're like, okay. But someone that knows better knows that those are idols.
But he was strong. Let's everybody remember the Sunday school lesson? He was strong because he gave a great argument. Ed did a good job explaining that this morning, by the way. But he gave a great argument for the existence of the one true God. It was a very strong argument, but it's also a very courageous one.
Well, and I just going back to what one of the things that I told that sometimes being strong and courageous is difficult, and that's hard for us to do, especially someone that might be a young Christian that is afraid of getting Christian. You have to have a lot of faith. Soul is what you know about.
One of the things about the Jesus movement that I was a part of, I was a tailgate of it, but I was still part of it. There was a very bold witnessing by new Christians. And there were so many lives changed. It was crazy. But there was such a boldness about our faith. And anyway, all right, we kind of almost answered this, but let's try it again. This is a question I wanted to tell you. How can we, as a church family, encourage? See the word encourage, the en. Whenever you see en, it always means in. All right, encampment. You're in camp. Encourage. You're encourage. Encourage. But how can we encourage our church, other church members, or other people in our church to be strong? How can we say be strong and courageous to people? How can we do that? That's a great question. I don't know if it's a great conversation, but it's a great question. How can we do that?
The biggest thing is to come alongside them. Even as something as simple as what you were describing earlier with writing a letter. That's something they can hang on to. They can review later during those times of trial or weakness or whatever. I mean, whether it be that or get a new believer that says, "Man, I really feel like I need to go out and share this. I need to go tell somebody whatever." Well, rather than just saying, "Oh, good luck with that. I'll pray for you," go with them. I mean, that kind of stuff. I think you come alongside.
Probably one of the worst things we do as Baptists is when someone's called to ministry, we just throw them out there. There's no mentoring. We just throw them out there. That's just not right. But that's one of the things we do best. When I was a young preacher, my first church had a little girl. It was on the news. It was a big deal. She died of leukemia. But for some reason, it kind of caught the whole Kansas City news. It was on the Kansas City news. My first funeral I ever preached may have been the biggest one I've ever preached. It was in a high school auditorium, packed. How old am I? 24? I'm 24. And when the little girl died, 2 pastors came down that were in our associations, and they helped me write the funeral sermon. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? They helped me write a funeral sermon. I didn't know how to write a funeral sermon. I'd been to funerals, but there's like the change we talked about. There's a big difference in attending a funeral and preaching one. Big difference. And I muddled through it, but those two guys didn't have to do that, but I can't remember. One of them's name was David, and he was bald, and I can't remember the other guy's name.
You still remember.
I
Remember the impact.
will never forget the impact that those guys had on me and the encouragement. And you know, in their way, you know what they said? Be strong and courageous. But here's how you do it. Yeah, I needed those two guys. Sure did. And I've helped new pastors write funeral. I helped it's probably been, I don't know how many years ago now, 7 or 8. Guy never preached a funeral before. He came over and we sat down, and I don't know if he listened to me or not, but anyway, we did it. All right. What else can we do? Coming alongside is a good one. See, I wouldn't say that. I would say mentoring. That's my mindset. But that's not coming alongside. Doesn't have to be mentoring. It can just be friendshiping and encouragement. All right. What else?
Or coming along.
Okay. Yeah, just knowing you've got someone to, you know. This is not a good illustration. Should I use it? Am I on camera? Ooh. One of my best friends saw our class reunion. She says, I said, well, Lisa, how you doing? She said, well, oh, she calls me Dr. Hooper, but she's mocking me. You understand? She said, well, Dr. Hooper, I've been divorced twice or 3 times. And she says, does that make you disappointed in me? And I told her, this is what I said. Y'all may not like it. I said, Lisa, I'm on your side every time. I'm always going to be on your side. It doesn't matter. And that's true, by the way, because I love loyalty to friends. To me, that's a big deal. But anyway, that's not a good example, and I won't ever use that again. But that's the way she needed to know I was on her side, right? I thought. Bad example. Okay. What else? Got any more bad examples? What else can we do? Well, let's just say it. We need to be an example to each other, you know. When you see someone being strong and courageous, that's a good, you know, illustration of that as well. All right. In Joshua 1:10 through, we're shifting gears in a major way, by the way. It talks about leadership, but I just want to read the 2 verses, 16 and 18. Let's see how we're doing here. 7. It's over. It's going to be over when we get done. 16 and 18 says, so they answered Joshua and says, all that you command us we will do, and wherever you send us we'll go. Just as we heeded, no, that's not right. Yeah, it is. Just as we heeded Moses in all things, we also heed you. Was that true? They're making. Well, they didn't always heed Moses. Only the Lord your God will be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your command and does not heed your words and all that you command him shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. All right, we're shifting gears in a big way right now because I want to talk about leadership. Joshua is a book, when you look through remaining chapters, you'll see Joshua is a book about leadership. And with the case of Ai, failed leadership. One of my favorite stories in Joshua is about Caleb. Remember, is he 80 something? How old's Caleb? But he's old, and he says to Joshua, "Give me that mountain." That's a good. I love that. That. So, why does God give godly leadership to accomplish godly plans and purposes? Think about in the Bible when God has something to do, he always gives godly leadership. Right? Think of something? Any story in the Bible, anything. So he always gives godly leadership. You read through, you're studying Acts in Sunday school. Later on, you're going to come where Paul comes back to the church in Jerusalem, and James, the half brother Jesus, is the leader of the church, and he's powerful. By the way, James is powerful in the church in a good way, but I'm just telling you. And he gives Paul his blessing. Well, it was godly leadership to reach the Gentiles. And so, why does God give godly leadership to accomplish godly purposes? What do you think?
A lot of times, people in general, I'm not going to say Baptist otherwise, but just humanity in general, has a hard time keeping focus on God. You know, so he gives us this person, this thing in front of us that we can say, all right, I'm following him. You know, in the wilderness, it was, you had the ark, you had the pillars of fire or smoke or whatever, but at this point,
But they were still following Moses,
right,
to your point.
right.
Yeah.
And so he's giving us, a Peter, he's giving us a Paul, he's giving us a Joshua or whatever, but you get that person out front that is really connected to and in tune with God's saying or God said or whatever. And when everybody else is busy with the task, they're busy with their life with the task and everything, they're able to kind of recalibrate by looking toward this person. And that person's responsibility to say, yeah, you're still going the right way, or turn a little to the left.
I have a great illustration, but I want to save it. But great illustration. What else?
I feel like they're not a kindergarten class. I just said, hey kids, it's lunchtime, go to the cafeteria. It would be total chaos. Because those little boogers would be all over the school, right? But because there is someone who's keeping them focused and holding up a mind, they get to where they need to go. Because there was a task at hand. But and if he were left to accomplish godly plans without godly leadership, you can guarantee that some selfishness is going to come into play. Pride is going to come into play. And things are not going to be God's will.
Yeah.
I just think the opposite of that is, what would the leadership look like if it wasn't godly? It would be selfish. Selfish, right? So, I don't know. I just think it would be otherwise chaos. I mean, sometimes it was chaos. It was, but there was always someone to keep them focused.
My illustration is perfect for that too, by the way. But godly, I think God has purposes for churches. We're going to get to the church in a minute. We're shifting gears. But people don't always follow godly leadership, right? Was Aaron, the brother of Moses, he was the beginning of the priesthood. He's supposed to be godly. Did he act godly when Moses was on the mountain? I love. You know what? Moses came down and said, "What are you people doing?" And Aaron said, "Man, we just threw that gold in the fire and a calf jumped out." It's, he was the big brother, but that's the little brother answer. Anyway, uh, okay, but I think God. I've always thought this. God's working His plan out. I think God has a plan for people. I think God has a plan for youth groups. I think God has a desire for youth groups, for churches, for Sunday school classes and stuff. But that don't mean they fulfill God's plan, right? Doesn't mean it at all. I think God has a plan for nations, but they don't always follow, that way. And the people of Israel. Next week I won't be here, but Ed's going to preach in. What did he say he was going to preach? Well, he's in Judges this week. Judges over and over and over does three things. The people worship foreign gods. The people are oppressed by foreign people. They cry out to God. God sends them a deliverer. That's the judge, a deliverer. And he or she, being Deborah, frees them. And they're all thankful. And they do it again. And that pattern's repeated over and over and over. The people worship false gods, oppressed by foreign powers, cry out to God. God sends a deliverer. They're freed. Here we go again. Over and over and over. And I promise you the book of Judges is in there for a reason. Because a lot of churches are that way. They don't accomplish godly plans and purposes because they won't follow godly leadership. Let's see. Oh, extra bonus question. Turn in your Bibles to Hebrews 13:17. Someone read it. I don't like my Bible translation. I know just enough Greek to mess everything up. Read.
Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls as those who will give an account, so that they can do this with joy and not grief, for that would be unprofitable for you.
I think godly leaders are held accountable, and I'm mostly talking about pastors, but it doesn't have to be. The God leaders are held accountable for what the people that he or she's leading does. Let me make that simpler. I always felt like God's holding me accountable for what my church does. If we're not winning people to the Lord and we're not doing what we're supposed to, I think I'm giving an account. And that verse says that you obey your leaders because they give an account. Well, that's the only where I know in the Bible. There may be other places where you give an account for somebody else's actions. And so, to me, it's God gives godly leaders, but it's important that we recognize our godly leaders and follow them. Anybody got a statement? You're flipping Bibles like crazy over there. Huh? No? It's important to have godly leaders in your life and that you follow them. Now, here's a super extra bonus question. How much time do we have? All right. Ed's always getting on to me for quitting early. Do you know that? But I want to teach you a great, absolutely great Bible lesson tonight. Absolutely off the chart great. And you can call it all sorts of things, but we're going to call it tonight reset. From time to time, God resets. When we look at the book of Joshua is a reset. You had Genesis that we talked about. Then you had the time of Moses, right? And when Moses dies, there's a reset of everything. Moses was the lawgiver. Moses was the deliverer. Moses, there's only like 3 times in the Bible where there's a bunch of miracles. This might surprise you, but there's miracles scattered, but most of the miracles are in these 3 times. The time of Moses, the time of Elijah and Elijah, and the time of Jesus. And the very early church, if you read through Acts, there's no miracles at the end of Acts. So those 3 times, now you pay attention because this is big stuff. This is big stuff. At the Transfiguration, who was there? Moses and Elijah. And Jesus, yeah. But why? Moses was the law, and Elijah's the beginning of the prophets. And so, and Jesus is the beginning of Christianity or whatever, Jesus. So in the Bible, there's only 3 times where there's significant miracles recorded. Now there's other miracles here and there, but mostly it's those 3 times. And the book of Revelation talks about 2 witnesses. And I believe, but the 2 witnesses, I think, are Moses and Elijah. And so these are great reset. When God's doing a great reset, he had miracles. All right? So when Moses delivers, there's all sorts of resets in the Bible. I don't know what I have in my notes here. Let me go off my notes. Okay, here they are. Here's just some I picked up. But when Adam and Eve left the garden, that was a reset, right? When I say reset, I mean everything's different. Everything's different. So when they left the garden, everything's different, right? When Noah left the ark, you know how many was on the ark? Say 8. You know what 8 means in the Bible? Do you know this? 8 means new beginning. A boy was circumcised on the 8th day. The 8th day is the beginning of a new week. And when you see 8 in the Bible, not that they're that much, but when you see 8 in the Bible, that means there's something new. The 8th day is the first day. So, and when you think about it, Jesus was resurrected not on the 7th day, but on the 8th day. That meant it's a new thing. Well, it's the first day. But you understand, see how that's the 8th day? No? Let me go again. Well, but 8 is, so there's 8 on the ark, and that's a new beginning. That's what that means. So 8 is that new beginning. Let's see what else I got here. I don't know. Oh, Abraham leaving Ur. Abraham believed God has reckoned him as righteous. What did he do? He left Ur and went to the promised land he hadn't seen, looking for a city that he didn't know. I got tons of these. The children of Israel leaving Egypt. And then where we are right now, Moses leaving Joshua in charge. But remember all of our conversation? When Joshua left the nomadic lifestyle, the wandering, and went in, they left, we talked about this at the very beginning, they left a culture for something else. They went from nomads to people who are going to live in cities. Big difference. Let's see if I got. Whoa. Okay, can you think of any more great resets? I can go on, but you give me something comes to mind. Okay, let's take one step back. The greatest reset in the Bible is when Jesus left the grave, right? Everybody say amen. All right, and then when Jesus left earth and ascended, that changed everything, didn't it? Everything's changing.
Before that, it would be him coming.
We left heaven.
Leaving heaven, leaving the grave, leaving earth.
Yeah,
Holy Spirit
there's your sermon. You got every deacon should have a sermon. Write that down. Be ready to preach it next
Bible's
week.
about leaving.
It is leaving your sins behind. Yeah. Well, but leaving. Well, we'll go on from the ascension. The disciples, you can see it in Acts. You've already studied it in Sunday school, but there's a slow shift of leaving as a sect of Judaism to become Christianity. Remember that in the early parts of the Bible, they were called people of the way. And then in Antioch, they were first called Christians. So there's this leaving the confines of Judaism to the expanse of Christianity and leaving just remember Paul and Silas? They left the Jews. He says, I'll go into the Gentiles. And one of the other leaving is when Paul left, this is big for you and me, but big. When Paul left what you and I call Turkey, but it was Asia Minor, the Macedonian call, and he went over to Greece, he left the comforts of the eastern part of the empire to go west. It was a big deal. And so Philippians, Thessalonians, Corinthians, all that. And so when God resets, usually there's something that you leave. And I don't know if you don't have to. Are there any resets in your life that you can talk about? I've got some, but I'm the preacher guy. You got any resets you want to talk about? When God your life just reset. Let me give you this. When Debbie and I went to seminary, you know how much money we had? None. We're leaving I had incredible pressure to go to Southwestern in Fort Worth, but I just didn't feel like it was God's will. I just couldn't get a peace about it. So we went to Kansas City, and that was a complete reset. It was good for our marriage. We got away from our parents, which we love our parents, but but we were on our own. And that whole time in Missouri, I don't know how we made it. But God was resetting our lives for ministry. You got one? I got more, but
I retired after 4 years.
What'd you teach? Oh, seventh grade science. My brother, the football coach, called the seventh and eighth grade the wasted years. He said that. Well, you just been, you just shot up in my book so high. If you can do that for 40 years, you are strong and courageous. Now, when did you start that? Okay. You don't know any of my people. Okay.
Losing my mom was like moving forward, everything was different. So that, I don't know, it's just a weird, just your thought process.
I was actually closer to my dad in lots of ways. He
I was
passed away.
very close to both of my parents.
Yeah, I was too.
And especially
But
once my mom passed away.
and it was a reset when my dad passed away a little bit, but um, he had suffered so much. It was, you wanted him to go. But when my mom died, it's different. Well, I don't know if it's true with everybody, but when your mom dies, it's different. I don't know what it is. And she loves sports. She would have loved Baker Mayfield. Every time I see Baker Mayfield, I think my mom would have. She would have loved Baker. But anyway.
I had a shift. And I mean, I've been a believer my whole life. So, but I think for me, truly, my faith grew so much. Both of my parents had cancer, both suffered, both sick, but God worked in them and through them while they were still sick. My faith just grew exponentially. How they
Yeah.
still live their life.
And a reset doesn't have. I think God does this in your life. I'm going to tell you in a minute. You need to pay attention. But when there's a reset in your life, it doesn't have to be, you know, just one day. It can be a process. Anybody else? Those are good ones. God reset.
The things now that I feel like I'm more present for my kids.
What's your PhD in?
Policy. Gave me a chance to work remotely.
So you chose a PhD instead of a doctor of education? We'll have that talk. I'm just interested. Okay?
Like you said, I had a reset from military base next to a huge city, large city, who broke, barely eating, little bitty town, Southwest Kansas. shift in the culture of this little church that was mostly gray hairs that I was in to college, and a dynamic, let's go reach the world group that I fell into the lap of through a lottery system for dorm room picks, to then marriage and jobs, and you start listing it all the way through where we are now. So there's been resets all through my life. I mean, I don't think I've ever went more than a couple of years without a dramatic reset.
Yeah, that does happen. My doctor didn't change my life that much. I'm just going to tell you. Hardly at all. I don't know what that means. I just wanted to tell you that. Just didn't do. Didn't do me any. I don't know if it did me. I don't encourage preacher friends. I don't know. I always. I don't know. I'm talking on both sides of my mouth. I think the education's really good. I don't know. But anyway, I think when you have a reset and you're saying, hey, be smart, be smart. You say, hey, everything's different all of a sudden. That's when you look to the Lord and see what God, how are you working? And look, let's go back and learn this. The major resets in the Bible, Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, God worked in powerful ways. Well, I think when there's a reset in your life, that's a sign or a warning or a clue that God's working in your life and trying to do something in your life. I'll talk about Joshua. Here's a reset. I mean, here's a big reset. Well, why did God say be strong and courageous? Because he needed to work in Joshua's life. And he is. He's going to. And the life of his people. So one of the things I would want to get out of the book of Joshua is when God does something new, that's the reset, in my life, am I paying attention to how he's working in my life? How's he working in my life? I love the book of Nehemiah. I love Nehemiah. Great book on leadership. I'm sorry, our class is closed. Oh, just waiting. But a great book on leadership. But, well, now I don't know what I was going to say about it. Yeah? Love the book of Nehemiah. Well, I'm sure it was really good, whatever I was going to say. I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue. God used Nehemiah to accomplish a purpose, rebuilding the walls. Something tangible, but it was a spiritual thing. And when Nehemiah and Ezra came back, that was a reset. Came back from captivity. See the reset there? And look what God did. God rebuilt the people. And that was an amazing thing. The Babylon captivity was terrible, right? Except they canonized scripture. That means they put all the books in the Bible. They canonized scripture. They started a thing called synagogue. Well, you know what happened with the synagogue? That's the model of the churches, right? And they never worshipped idols again after the Babylonian. Those were good things. There's more, but those were good things. So God resets. I think I don't know what my last slide says. Allie says I have to put it on my. What does that mean? Reset. Think about resets in your life. Pay attention. That's all I'm telling you. Pay attention. There it is. When there's resets, pay attention. God's trying to do something in your life. That's how I know I'm done. Now, did you have that in your doctoral program, huh? Anything like that ever come up? Of course not. I dabbled with a Doctor of Education degree. Dabbled, but never.